Chapter Imagery, the Test.
Toward the end of the Vedian period, a great discovery was made, unequal in the entire history of human civilizations on Earth. People learned the manifest power of collective thought. Here we must define human thought. Man's thought is an energy without equal in any dimension. It can create beautiful worlds or weapons. It can destroy a planet. And it has created all matter without exception, what we see today. Nature, the animal world, man himself, all were created in a great inspiration by divine thought. The many artificial objects, machines, and mechanisms we can see today were created by man's thought. You might think that it is the hands of man that produced them. Yes, today hands have to be used. Nonetheless, in the beginning, thought creates every detail. Today, man's thought is considered more perfect than in the past, but that is far from true. In each person of the Vedian civilization, it was 1,000,000 times faster and fuller of information than the thought of modern man. As proof of this, we can take from the past the knowledge of the use of plants for healing and food. Nature has a mechanism far more perfect and complex than artificial things. Man did not only call many beasts to serve him, he did not only determine the purpose of all plants. When he understood the power of collective thought, he saw that with its help he could control the weather. He could make a spring flow from the depths. If one mishandles thought, one can strike down a bird in flight and influence the life of a distant star, plant gardens on stars or destroy stars. This is not a fiction, but a reality, and this was all given to humanity. Today each person knows how. Having started down the technocratic path, man tried to create a rocket that could fly to the stars. They flew to the moon and back, spending quite a bit of money and energy, to the Earth's detriment. But they changed nothing on the moon. A method like that is doomed. It is unpromising and dangerous for all the people of Earth and for other planets. There is another method, much more perfect. By thought alone, one can cultivate a flower on the moon, create an atmosphere compatible for man, plant a garden, and be in that garden with the ones beloved in the flesh. But before this, thought must transform the entire earth into a blooming heavenly garden. This needs to be done by collective thought. Collective thought is powerful. In all the universe there is no energy capable of inhibiting its actions. Present-day matter and technology are a reflection of collective thought, which invented all mechanisms and modern weapons. But remember, I said that in Vedian times, the thought of each living person was immeasurably greater in power and energy. 9 people gathered together could move objects, stones weighing many tons. In order to use collective thought more easily to benefit the majority, while simultaneously not wasting time to assemble many people in one place, people thought up the images of different gods. With their help, they began controlling nature. The god of the sun appeared in his image of fire, rain, love, and fertility. People created everything essential to them for life through images in which human thought was concentrated. It accomplished many useful things. For example, rain was essential for watering. So one person aimed his thought at the image of the god of rain. If rain was indeed essential, then many people would direct their energy at the image of rain. When the image had enough energy, clouds would gather and rain would fall, watering the crops. Unlimited opportunity was given humanity by divine nature. When humanity was able to overcome the temptations of unlimited power, to keep all the universal energies in balance in itself, then gardens, the fruit of human thought, could rise in other galaxies, and man could make other worlds happy. The period, known as Imagery, flourished. Man created in it, and felt himself a god in it. Who else could the Son of God be? In the Imagery period, man akin to God begins to create images. This period lasts 9,000 years. God does not intervene in man's actions. The various energies of the universe become excited, tempting man. There are particles of all the universal energies in man. There are many of them, and they are contradictory. But all the particles of universal energies must be balanced in man, combined into a single harmonious whole. When even one comes to predominate, the others are immediately reduced, the harmony is violated, and then the earth is transformed and becomes disharmonious. The image can lead people to the beautiful, but it can also lead to destruction when the unity is violated internally. But what is an image? An image is an energy essence made by human thought. It can be creative, one person or several. A vivid example of collective co-creation of an image is the actors acting. One person describes the image on paper, and another depicts the described image on stage. What happens to the actor depicting an invented image? For a time, the actor replaces his own feelings, aspirations, and desires for those inherent in the invented image. In doing so, the actor may change his walk, his facial expression, his usual clothing. Thus, the invented image takes on flesh for a time. Only man has been granted the ability to create images. The image created by man can live in a dimension only as long as a person presents it through his thought. One person or several at once. The larger the number of people nourishing an image with their emotions, the stronger it becomes. An image created by collective human thought can possess tremendous destructive or constructive power. It has a feedback connection with people, and shapes the character and the manner of conduct of large and small groups of people. Using the discovery of their great possibilities, people enthusiastically created the planet's life. As it happened, however, at the beginning of the Imagery period, only 6 people were unable to keep in balance within themselves the universal energies God had given man at creation. They may even have appeared so that humanity could experience everything. At first, only in one of the 6 did the energy of greatness and selfhood take the upper hand, then in another, and a third, and a 6th. At first they did not meet together. Each lived by himself, but was drawn to like. Now they directed their thought to how to become rulers of all the people of the earth. Publicly, they called themselves priest. Reincarnating from age to age, they live on to this day. The peoples of all the earth today are governed by just 6 people. These are the priests. Their dynasties are tens of thousands of years old. From generation to generation, they have handed down to their heirs occult knowledge and the science of imagery, which is partially known to them as well. They painstakingly conceal Vedian knowledge from everyone else. Among the 6 there is one principal one, and he is called the head, or the high priest. Today he considers himself the head ruler of the human community. The high priest began to suspect from just the few sentences I uttered, and that you cited in the books as well as from the public reaction, who I in fact was. Just in case, with his insignificant powers, he attempted to destroy me. He did not succeed. He was surprised, and he tried to use even more of his powers, since he still did not believe completely who I was. Now I've uttered the word Ved Russian, thereby revealing myself fully. The current high priest on earth today fears even that word. Imagine how he has been shaken now, knowing what stands behind him. Now he will send his soldiers, all his bio-robots, and the forces of all the occult dark sciences to destroy me. And he himself will be forming his plan of destruction every minute. Let him do so. On the other hand, he will be too busy to bother with others. Here we're speaking about malicious articles in the modern press, Vladimir. Now you will see them intensify and become more extensive. You will see provocations and slander. The entire arsenal of devices that have been used for millennia by the forces of darkness to destroy the culture of our people. But what you see in the beginning is only the tip of the iceberg. Not all people can contemplate occult attacks, but you will understand them too, feel and see them. Do not be afraid of them, I beg you. What is frightening is powerless in front of the fearless. You must forget what you've seen immediately. No matter how omnipotent the forgotten monster is, it will cease to exist altogether. It is an unusual fact, and I can see the doubts in you. Don't be in any hurry to yield to your doubts. Think calmly for yourself. After all, even a small group of people who have gathered together and decided to build something always has a leader among them, so let's call him the ruler. A small enterprise has an official director. A large enterprise has several rulers and one who is chief over them. There are many rulers over all kinds of areas, which have various names: territory, province, state, community, republic. It doesn't matter. Each state has a ruler, and he has many aides. The ruler of the state, is that all? That is what people often believe. Do you think that no one controls the entire human community, and that there are no takers to ascend to the earthly throne? There were and are takers. You know from recent history, many names of commanders who attempted to seize power over the world by force. But none of them were ever able to seize power over the world. When they merely approached universal power, something inevitably happened. As a result, the army and the pretender to world sovereignty were destroyed. Further, a state considered powerful and flourishing that encroached upon power over the whole world suddenly became mediocre. In the last 10,000 years, this is what always happened. But why? It is all because the world has long had a secret ruler. He plays with states, their rulers, and individual people. He calls himself the high priest of the entire earth, and his 5 assistants are called priests. Pay attention to one other fact, Vladimir. Think for yourself. Wars among people have gone on unceasingly for millennia in different parts of the globe. In each country, the looting, plagues, and different disasters have intensified from day to day, but the strictest prohibition has been placed on one question. Is human civilization in fact following the path of progress, or has it been degrading with each passing day? The answer to this question will be simple. First, look at how the priest attained their power and how they have been able to hold on to it until now. Their first achievement leading to their secret goal was the creation of the Egyptian state. Present-day historians know the Egyptian state more than others. However, if you take the facts and commentaries from the history and clear out the mysticism, then you can come in contact with many secrets. First fact. In history, the supreme ruler was called the pharaoh. Many of the pharaoh's military accomplishments and defeats have been described. Their magnificent tombs strike the imagination to this day and draw scholars to try to guess their secrets. Meanwhile, the pyramid's grandeur leads us away from the main secret. The pharaoh was considered not only the ruler of all people, but also a kind of god. The people came to him with their request for a bountiful year, for rainfall, and to divert ill winds. History can know about many of the pharaoh's actual deeds, but after learning all the facts about the pharaohs, ask yourself whether any of the pharaohs really was the ruler of a great state and a god over people. Having considered the facts, you will see that the pharaoh was nothing but a bio-robot in the priest's hands. Here are the facts we have, known to historians as well. During the time of the pharaohs, there were magnificent temples and priests, and there was one high priest. Several candidates for pharaoh were always studying under their watchful eye. Everything they wanted, the priest suggested to the young boys. Among other things, they suggested to them that the pharaoh was chosen by God. At the same time, they talked about how the high priest himself heard God speak in the secret temple. Then the priest would decide which of the candidates should be pharaoh. So they would set the day. The new pharaoh would take his seat on a magnificent throne, holding symbols and arrayed in special garments. To the people he was an omnipotent king, a god. Only the priest knew that their bio-robot was on the throne, and exactly, having studied his character since childhood, how he would govern, and what gifts he would offer up to please the priesthood. Some few pharaohs tried to get out from under the high priest power, all without success. After all, the priest power is invisible, whereas the pharaoh's royal raiment is visible to all. The priest power does not require a verbal command or a manifest communication. The priest power over each ruler does not let up for a moment, and that power settles in the majority of his subjects as a false suggestion about the world order. If the pharaoh himself had ever been able to think calmly, freed of the images suggested to him, he might have become a human being, but it had all been planned from the beginning that the pharaoh would not be able to free himself from the daily cares and commotion. The commotion. News from the far corners of the vast state are brought to him by his couriers, scribes, deputies. Swift decisions have to be made. Then there is also war, which takes up all one's thoughts. The pharaoh speeds in his chariot, he censures or rewards his subjects, and often he himself does not get enough sleep. Meanwhile, the priest contemplates calmly, and therein lies his advantage. The priest constructs plans to hold the whole world under his one power. Even more, he thinks about how to create his own world, separate from the world created by God. What does he care about the silly pharaoh boy and his crowds of subjects? For the priest, they are all playthings. The priest secretly studied the science of imagery. The human masses forgot the law of nature more and more. It was the priest, Vladimir, who transferred the energy of interaction between people and the living divinity, the creation of nature, to the temples they created, who fed off that energy, the energy of people, not repaying it. For each, what was obvious under Vedian culture suddenly became secret. The people started going to sleep, as if hypnotized, and seemed to follow decrees without thinking, half asleep. The people destroyed nature's divine world. They built an artificial one to please the priest. The priests maintained their science in strict secrecy. They didn't even dare write all of it down on scrolls. They invented their own language for interacting with each other, and you can learn this fact from history too. Another language became essential for them, so that in communicating with each other, no one came into contact with their secrets. Thus, to this day, these simple secrets have been handed down to priestly generations. 6,000 years ago, the high priest, one of those 6 priests, decided to take power over the whole world. He reasoned, I cannot seize power by military means or with the pharaoh's armies, even if I teach commanders to use deadlier weapons than others have. What can an army of stupid, thoughtless men do? Plunder gold. But there is already a lot of that. There are more than enough slaves, but they emanate a non-beneficent energy, and it is bad to take food from the hands of a slave. It does not taste good, and it is harmful. Human souls must be subjugated in all the energy of their tender love, aimed at oneself. But here we need scientific thought, not an army. The science of imagery. This is my invisible army. The deeper I come to know it, the more loyal the army will be to me. The less the crowd knows it, plunged as it is into the occult and unreality, the more I will have conquered it. The high priest came up with his own plan. To this day it finds its reflection in the events of 6,000 years of history. You and everyone knows about recent events. They differ only in their interpretations. But you just try to find your own, and then you will discover the truth. Look. Here, at the council of those 6 priests, a plan is set forth that will henceforth be known to many. The Bible, the Old Testament, tells us this. The priest Moses, at the behest of the high priest, leads the Hebrew people out of Egypt. And people are promised the most beautiful life in the promised land, which has been prepared for the Hebrew people by God. Before God they declare the Jews to be their chosen people. The tempting news excites minds, and some of the people follow Moses. For 40 years he leads the people from place to place in the desert. The priest's assistants read the prophecies constantly. They talk about chosenness, and force them to do battle and loot cities, and all in his name, in God's name. When someone, recovering from this psychosis, demands a return to his former life, to correct him, he is declared a sinner, and he is given a deadline to reform. If he does not, they kill him. The priests do not hide behind their own name. but call these acts of God. I'm not telling you a fiction or a dream. Each person can himself be convinced of this by the Bible, the Old Testament. In that great historic book, each person can see the events of history in their authenticity, if he only wakes slightly from the hypnotic dream of millennia, and reads how the Hebrew people were programmed and transformed into the priest host. Later, Jesus attempted to deprogram his own people, having shown his capacity for knowledge, he attempted to turn back the priest intention. Traveling among wise men, he tried to learn the science of imagery grain by grain. Once he had learned a lot, he decided to save his Hebrew people. He was able to create his own religion so that it could stand up to what was this terrible thing. His religion was not for the peoples of all the earth. It was intended only for the Hebrew people. He himself spoke of this more than once. His words were written down by his disciples, and you can read them today. Here, for example, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 15, verses 22 through 28. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried unto him, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou Son of David, my daughter is grievously vexed with a devil. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she crieth after us. But he answered and said, I'm not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. What do these words mean? I'm not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Why is Jesus teaching only for the Jews? Why does he consider the Hebrew people lost? I assure you, Vladimir, Jesus understood that during the 40-year programming in the Sinai desert, the majority of the Hebrew people plunged into a hypnotic dream. This portion and Moses himself were a weapon in the hands of the high priest. They were his soldiers, whom he obliged for the pleasure of his own ambition to seize domination over the people of all the earth. They will be fighting for millennia in different corners of the earth. Rather than the primitive sword or bullet, their weapon will be cunning and a way of life in which all people submit to occultism, which means priestly self-regard. They will fight without sparing themselves. But any defeat presumes the presence of opposing sides, you thought. And if that is so, where are the victims? In defeats there must be victims on both sides. You could have found this proof yourself from the dates of events mentioned in various historical sources. To ease the search for those terrible dates, I will cite for you now just a few of them. If you wish, you can seek out historical confirmation yourself. Today everyone, including you, Vladimir, knows how terror kills children and old people in Israel from terror. Very recently you heard, there was a war, which was called World War II. Documents have even been preserved on how purposely during the years of that war Jews, old people and children, mothers and pregnant young women bearing fruit, and young men who had not yet known love, were burned in ovens, poisoned with gas, and buried alive in mass graves. Not one, not 100, not 1,000 people perished. Rather, millions of them were viciously murdered in a short period of time. Historians blame Hitler for this, but the culprit lived in another time, considerably earlier. In 1113 in Kievan Rus, popular indignation against the Jews suddenly flared up. Jewish homes both in Kiev and in other places in ancient Rus were looted and burned, and the Jews, even children, were murdered without mercy. The people of ancient Rus, gripped by a bestial hatred, were prepared to remove their ruling princes as well. Gathering in a council, the princes decided to promulgate a law. Now from all the Russian land, expel all the Jews, and not let them in henceforth. Rob and kill those who enter secretly. In 1290, the English suddenly began killing their Jews. Rulers were forced to expel the Jewish people from the country. In 1492, Jewish pogroms began in Spain. The threat of physical annihilation hung over all the Jews living in Spain, and they were forced to quit the country. From the moment the Jews left the Sinai desert, the peoples of many countries began to hate them. A hate manifested first here, then there, in cruel pogroms and killings. I have cited the dates of the terrible pogroms merely so that you yourself can learn from the history people have written. The Jewish people have had many conflicts besides these dates. Each of them individually is less significant. Of course, they're all the ones we know, but if the many terrible conflicts are combined into one, it becomes the most terrible of the terrible, unprecedented in scale. If this goes on for more than a millennium, then one can conclude that the Jewish nation is guilty before people. But what are they guilty of? Historians, both ancient and present day, proclaim that they have brought plots against the state. They tried to deceive everyone, great and small. They aim to take away the little the poor man has through trickery, and to ruin the rich man altogether, and this is confirmed by the fact that among the Jews there are many rich people capable of influencing even governments. But there is one question you must ask yourself. How righteous is he himself who has been deceived by Jews? He who accumulated wealth, did he obtain it all by honest means? And he who is doomed by power, is he intelligent enough if he can be so easily deceived? In addition, the majority of rulers are dependent, and it is the Jews who have clearly shown this. One can discuss this topic for a long time, but the answer is simple. In the occult world, everyone lives by deceit, so is there any point in discussing who achieved more among everything else? As for the Jewish people, any of today's peoples could be in their place. Any had they been subjected to the most unprecedented programming, over 40 years of wandering through the desert, listening only to the occult, not seeing what God created. Jesus tried to deprogram and save his people. He came up with a new religion for them, different from the previous one. For example, instead of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, he said, whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. Instead of you are a chosen people, he said, you are God's slave. Jesus could have told his people the truth, told them about Vedian times, about how man could live happily on his own homestead, in contact with the creations of the Creator Father, but the Jewish people had already been programmed. They believed only in occult acts, and the unreal world pressed on their consciousness. Jesus decided to act by occult means as well. He created an occult religion. The high priest was able to guess Jesus' intention. The high priest thought hard for more than a year until he found a solution. Quite brilliantly, he decided the following. There's no point struggling against Jesus' teaching. Using his intellect, he had to embed his Jewish soldiers among the peoples of all the earth, while leaving Israel its old religion. Thus it happened as the high priest intended. Two essentially different philosophies began to exist in the same time. One proclaims that the Jews are the chosen people, as Moses taught, and everyone must be subjected to them. The other says, in the words of Jesus, that all are equal before God, and people should not rise up over others, and must love their neighbor, even their enemy. The priest realized that if he could seize the whole world with the Christian religion, which calls everyone to love and obedience, while at the same time preserving Judaism, that he would raise one over all and the world would be subdued. The world would bow to the Jews, but they were merely soldiers. The world would be bowing to the priest. And the priest prophets went into the world, sincerely trying to bear the new teaching. Jesus' teaching? Not quite. The doctrine now included quite a lot introduced by the priest. What happened then, you know? Rome fell. The great empire was not destroyed by outside enemies. Rome collapsed from within, after recognizing Christianity. However, the emperors believed that their Christianity strengthened their power. They were very flattered by the idea that any power comes from God, and the ruler, the emperor, is anointed to his kingdom by God's grace. In the 4th century, Christianity officially and in fact emerged victorious in Rome. Smiling, the high priest issued an unspoken command to the Byzantine emperor without actually contacting him. And Christian Rome burns Library of Alexandria to the ground. They burned 700,033 volumes. Bonfires of books and ancient scrolls burned in various cities. They burned books from the pagan period, but among these books were also a few with the knowledge of Vedian people. They did not burn those but removed them, hid them, and studied them in a narrow circle among the initiated and only later destroyed them. The high priest now felt that since people had moved further and further away from the knowledge of the primary sources, there would be no obstacles on his path. Emboldened, he issued one more invisible command, and as a result, at the Second Council of Constantinople, an anathema was announced against the teaching called reincarnation. Why, you ask? So that people would not give close thought to the essence of earthly life, so that they would think that outside Earth there exists a happy life. So many began to believe. The priest smiled. He knew what would happen next, and he reasoned that man did not see life beyond Earth. No one knew how to get into heaven, where it was good, and how to avoid hell, which was frightening. It is here that we give an occult message to suit his plan. Thus, to this day the priests have spread messages that suited them to the world, but they were unable to gain total power over the world, even when they thought the strongest bastion of pagan culture, Rome, had been destroyed. There still remained on Earth just one little island, not under the power of the usual spells. Even before Rome and before the appearance of Jesus' teachings, the high priest strove to destroy the culture of the last Vedian state, Rus.
End of chapter. Join us for the next segment of the family book, Book 6 of the Ringing Cedars series, The Secret War Against Vedian Rus.